What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and welcome to another episode of the Dope Confidence Podcast. We have been bringing y'all some amazing individuals that have transformed their pain into purpose. They are carving their way through this world, helping people, serving people, and they're in alignment with who they're called to be. So I'm excited to bring on my next guest today. Her name is Danielle Shea, and she is going to share her journey about being a healing coach for sexual assault survivors. And I am just overjoyed that she is willing to share her story, and she's going to be able to help you or someone that you love. So let's go ahead and bring Danielle in. How are you doing, Danielle?
I'm great, Amanda. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. And I always share on my episodes, I always find something within an individual that I meet, that I'm interviewing, that is in alignment with some of the things that I've experienced or the people that I know. And I definitely have some people that I know that have experienced sexual assault. So this episode is going to be very impactful. And for those of you that are listening or watching, I know you may experience some triggers. So we just wanted to let you know before we start, you may experience some, but please reach out for support. Call, if you're in California, 211 therapy, life coach. You can also reach out to NAMI for help. So we just wanted to let you guys know that before we get started. So Danielle, please tell us a little bit about your journey. I know you just didn't start off being a coach, but tell us about your journey that led you there.
Yeah, definitely. And before I go and answer that question, I just want to say thank you for
Oh,
holding space for this conversation, and then also just giving the listeners maybe the opportunity to take a breath to go, okay, like we know what we're getting into, but it's going to be okay. And then just for everyone to take another deep breath with us. I am very sensitive with this topic on the information and the words that I use. And so know that I work with survivors all over the world. And my most important mission for any space that I come into is how can I create a safe space for those of us that are here? And that includes you, Amanda, but it also includes all of those listeners. So know that while there might be feelings that come up, we're going to give you tools and tactics to be able to work through that, and that we're going to have a safe space here. So just wanted to
thank you
put
so
that
much. I thank you. I appreciate that.
there. Yeah.
So
And
tell
so,
us.
yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, like with anything in life, with anyone, we never just start off doing one thing. It all evolves and changes and grows. And I tell people jokingly, but very seriously, I have a very storied past. I've done so many different things in my life. And I've been an engineer. I've been a dance teacher. I've been, I started my first business and it was in education. And I've done so many different things. And how I got to this business was, through all of those different life experiences. I experienced my sexual abuse in college. I was drugged and someone had sex with me without my consent. And that is
Wow.
how we will be referring to it. Um, and, that was the first and most traumatic of the events, but it also wasn't the last time that I was ever emotionally or physically abused or taken advantage of throughout my college years. And then with that came a lot of turmoil, self-hatred, disconnection from myself. And so there's a lot of healing, a lot of therapy, a lot of working on myself, developing that self-awareness. And when I graduated from school, because I have my degree in mechanical engineering, I went and was an engineer. And then there was sexual harassment in the workplace.
Wow.
Um, you know, there was different things that I experienced. I ended up leaving my first job out of school because there was someone else who was sexually harassing others. And I was like, I am not going to be a part of this. No. And I was the only person who spoke up.
Wow.
No one knew about it. And then I left, and that's when I started my first business, which was again in education. And, in 2020, when the world shut down and I decided to close that business, I went back into engineering. And then I was just like, what do I want to do? Like, this is not where I need to be. This is not my calling. This is not it. And so
Yeah.
I just got this download when I was taking a course, and I'm always learning about, girl, it is time to tell your story. And I was
Wow.
like, hell no, we are not doing that. Uh-uh. No, 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 ma'am, we are not doing that. And then I just sat with it and let it be there. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, it is time to tell my story. And so I just dove right in. I'm a very go big or go home kind of person. So I dove
Mm-hmm.
right in, got a whole bunch of certificates and education and learning. But the biggest piece of how I take my clients that I've been working with for now 2 years is through my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I went to therapy to go and support, I was lucky enough to find a therapist who got me because she'd been through it.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people who don't have access and resources. There's so much privilege wrapped around therapy. There's so much privilege wrapped around my own healing journey and the support system that I had. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, it was how do I now create a space in that safe space for people to say, me too,
Right.
pun intended, but also, there's a reason the movement is called that, and then get the support that they need. And it's because I don't just sit across a couch from my clients. I
Mm-hmm.
hold their hand and hold up the lantern, and we walk through their dark tunnel together until we find the light, and we try to figure out how can we do that. And so each client is different, but there's also a step-by-step process that I take them through as well.
Yeah. And I know you said you had this download where like it's time for you to share your story. What
Yeah.
type of feelings or what were you feeling emotionally when you had that epiphany? Like it's time for me to tell my story, but the story is heavy, it's dark, it's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, such a great question. So I had determined long ago that I was not going to tell my story until there were certain people in my life who no longer were there.
Mm.
Um, and it was because I didn't want to place that burden of what had happened to me on their shoulders,
Yeah.
because there were people who loved and cared about me and supported me, and I just couldn't do that to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt, and so when I got this download, it was at a time in my life of, okay, well, one of those persons, like, rest in peace, is no longer with us, and the other one has dementia, so they're not able to understand. So me
Mm-hmm.
going out and telling my story, they're not going to have access to that information. So that was a kind of a breath for me to say, okay, they're
Right.
not going to have access to this information, so it feels safe for me to do that. But then also, and not that those people aren't safe people, it was that I felt like I couldn't hurt them that
Mm-hmm.
way. It
I
was like, oh,
understand.
it's happened to their baby.
Yeah.
But then also, there's so many things in life that keep us small and that keep us feeling powerless.
Mm-hmm.
This specific type of trauma is definitely one of those things. But you know what else really kept me small and powerless?
What's that?
My understanding of my own privilege.
Mm.
I was like, who am I to tell my story? Like, I had people who believed me. I had access to therapy. I had access to people who were willing to go to court for me. I had access to, like, law enforcement who was willing to be there and support me through this. And because I had all that privilege, I was like, who am I to even bring this up when there are so many people out there
Wow.
who don't have that? And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized, well, that's silly. If you have privilege, use it, you
Right.
know? But yeah, so there's all of these different kind of confusing feelings going on. But ultimately, I was able to, because I'd done so much work on myself and gone through
Mm-hmm.
my deep healing, I was able to say, this fear is unfounded, and you are going to help people
Mm-hmm.
change their lives by doing this.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned about safeguarding certain loved ones in your life, because I am a survivor, a thriver of domestic violence, and
Yeah.
I hid it from my family. I would see them every week, and they didn't even know. But I felt what you're saying. There was a part of me that wanted to safeguard them. I also was a mom too, and I wanted to safeguard my daughter from these stories. But I know from my own personal experience, and then also holding space for a lot of women and having a storytelling night for women, is that as women, we walk around with a lot of shame, guilt, and fear, right? Judgment, right? and we don't share. And then sometimes we think our story is not worth sharing too, especially if you haven't been through, well, I haven't been through that traumatic experience, so my story is not worth anything. But I'm glad that you mentioned that, like, your story is worth telling. Like, your story can change someone's life. And I'm so glad that you said yes and honored your story and shared it. And so once you started to share, how did you start sharing your story? Let's start there. I love stories, so let's go.
First of all, everything you said, like, yes. And like, honestly, roll credits because that was amazing. Um, I'm really enjoying this. I'm having a really good time being here with you. That was
Me
so good.
too. It's like girlfriends having like coffee, wine, something.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm like, okay, what was the question? All right, how did I start telling my story? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it started small, right? It started with, you know, telling myself my story. I
Mm.
didn't believe what had happened to me. I thought it was my fault. I apologized to my perpetrator because
Wow.
I thought it was my fault. I called my boyfriend at the time, told him I cheated on him because I thought it was my fault. I mean, this thing imploded my life. And it wasn't until I started telling people the story the way that it had happened,
Mm-hmm.
and it mostly just out of like punishment for myself because again, I thought it was my fault. And so I was just looking for ways to destroy myself, and
Mm.
other people had to come to me and like hold my hand and look me dead in the eyes and go, Danielle, that's called something else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not what happened to you. And I was like, oh, dang. Okay. And then the pieces started coming in. And then because I was able to have that kind of foundation from other people, and again, just telling the story as it happened,
Mm-hmm.
they were able to plant a different seed in my mind that it wasn't my fault, because we're told it is your fault. You have all that shame. You have all that guilt. We're carrying it all the time,
Mm.
just like you said, Amanda. And so it was in those spaces. And then it was going to counseling. And then it was going to therapy. And then it was, you know, going to stopping therapy, going back, and you have to fill those forms out over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then it was just being myself and my healing and allowing that to happen. And I would just have other people come up to me. And I've always been that kind of person that my grandma's this way too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just like tap her on the shoulder at the grocery store and just start telling her their life
Really?
story. I'm the
Wow.
same way. And so it's just this thing that people started coming to me with their stories. And I would just look at them with so much love and be like, we always find each other.
Mm.
And then I started
Mm-hmm.
sharing a little bit of my story here and with them, and just found the freedom and also the clarity that comes with reiterating the story back to yourself when you didn't believe it in the first place. There's a lot of power in that. But then
Mm.
also hearing other people be like, oh, dang, okay, yes, what you just said there, this happened to me. And it was more
Mm-hmm.
like, it wasn't even just like a monologue, it was a conversation of healing and growth and development that happened.
Yeah.
And then the first time I told my full story, and it's not even really my full story, was when I started this business. I literally set up my camera,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just hit record. And it was like a 40-minute story. And you can find it on my YouTube channel at Danielle Shea.
Wow.
And it's just like, this is it. And it's also with not with any of the gruesome details as well.
Wow. Wow.
Um, yeah.
How'd you feel when you were recording?
Cried, angry, pissed
Mm.
off, liberated, free. You
Mm.
know, I think that I really, really like that question, because I think that we often ask this question and the person answering it feels as though they're expected to say one thing. But the truth is that we are multi layered individuals, and it is always more than one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Joy
Yeah.
and sadness, they are friends, they come at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. That. Wow. I when you're telling me this right now, and I can visualize you in front of a camera sharing your story. And I mean, you're not even knowing, like, okay, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna say that, and then I'm gonna say this. You're just going for it. And I know that you did experience a lot of emotions and feelings, but you did it, and that's the most
Yeah.
liberating thing of all, right? Is like, I actually said this out loud, because our stories, we keep them in our head, right? We know what happened, we were there, we saw it, but we keep them here. But you let it
Yeah.
out.
Well, I really like what you just said. Two things that you just said I think is so,
Jeez.
so important. One is that, yeah, when I hit record, I didn't know what I was going to say. And you know what happened when I was recording is
Mm.
I actually started remembering more things and was like, oh shit. Oh, dang. Okay. Like, oh. And then I was like, oh, actually rewind, have to go back and tell this part of the story and then
Right.
come back forward. So there's, again, a lot of clarity in that
Yeah.
understanding. And how do you process? I'm a verbal processor. So I need to talk things out. Other people
Yeah.
aren't. How do you focus on that? And then the other thing that you said is like just that liberation of telling it, that
Mm-hmm.
freedom that comes with it, because it's like you keeping it in your mind. It's why journaling is so important and so helpful.
Yes.
You take that
Yes.
out of your brain, all of a sudden you're like, wow, a weight is lifted because you're not carrying it anymore. You set it down somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm just loving this conversation. Ah. So tell me, so you shared your story, and
Mhm.
you had this moment where you're like, I need to use my story and my experiences to help other people. How did you start?
Yeah. So I just started writing. I'm a writer.
Mm.
I really, that's the medium that I've been using since I was a kid.
Okay.
And the whole way that I've built my business is how do I need to operate to make this sustainable, and really not considering, you know, how should this look or whatever. And so I started writing and I started a website, and it started off honestly not even related to sexual abuse, just about other things, until
Mm.
finally when I got that download was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's tailor it, let's niche down, right? But more than that, let's get focused. And then just creating content and just asking myself, what is information I needed? Who
Mm.
did I need at that time? Like 19-year-old Danielle, who did she need?
Yeah.
What was she looking for? What were the questions that she was asking? How was she feeling? Well, she was drowning herself in drugs and sex and alcohol, and
Mm.
she was making all of the wrong decisions on purpose. And she was actively looking for ways to destroy herself. And then I said, okay, well, what are the tools that helped me?
Mm-hmm.
And then started putting those things into place. And that's how I started building out my program, Thrivers Academy. And I love that you use the word thriver, because
Mm-hmm.
I do not like the word survivor. It is not
Mm.
something I subscribe to. I'm here to live a joyful and fulfilled life, and
That's
I'm here to
right.
help other people do that too. So that's how Thrivers Academy was born, is just building out what are the tools and that I used, and then what are the steps that I took, and then
Mm-hmm.
how can I rearrange them so they actually make sense and they can actually help people get through this
Yeah.
quicker. And I guess not get through it, but find peace, find healing quicker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love how you explained it, how you said, what did the younger me need? What did
Yeah.
she need to hear? What resources did she need? Kind of like reverse engineering they talk about in business. But
Or as
that's
an engineer. Yeah.
all right. That's right. You are a mechanical engineer. You already know. So that led you to helping women and men that are survivors or now thrivers
Yeah.
of sexual assault. How did it feel when you started opening up Thrivers Academy and you started seeing the impact that your story and that your experiences were on other people?
Yeah. Well, it was really surprising because last year, 100% of my clientele were men.
Wow.
And yeah. And most people are shocked, and everyone's shocked for slightly different reasons. I was shocked because I didn't know that I was intentionally creating safe space for those who have been through this, and I wasn't
Mhm.
trying to be gendered about it. But I was just surprised that there was so much feeling of safety from my male clients that they were like, this is
Yeah.
the person that I need to tell my story to. Because
Mhm.
oftentimes I'm the first person that anyone's ever told their story to in decades.
Mm.
Decades. And so it was surprising and it was so rewarding for me when I had like men speaking up and going like, I need help too.
Yeah.
Because there's so, and we can get into this a little bit later, but there's so much more stigma wrapped
Mhm.
around their trauma, specifically their sexual trauma.
Yeah.
And then for Thrivers Academy, just like allowing there to be a safe space, and we're actually like revamping everything right now, me
Mhm.
and my team, and that's super exciting because we're taking all the things that people liked and making it better, or we're rearranging things or just making content more accessible for people.
Mhm.
And so it's I mean, there's nothing better, right? Like when teachers get their kids have that like aha moment,
Yeah.
or a nurse like I'm like trying to think of not a gross nurse story. My mom's a trauma nurse, so I'm
Oh.
like, but the satisfaction that she would come home with, like, I took a
Yeah.
bullet out of somebody today.
Mm.
I saved someone's life, like as we were rolling them down the hallway, and so it doesn't feel like those are two very different extremes, right?
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of somewhere in there, like, wow, because it's not me. I'm not the one doing the work.
Mhm.
They are.
Mhm.
I'm just
Mhm.
going, here's the tool. This is how I would use it in your situation. And let's see if it works. Oh, it
Yeah.
doesn't work? Great. Give me that one back. And here's another one, or and just filling out their toolbox. And so it's, yeah, I don't know how to describe the feeling, but it's great. And it's one of the things that keeps you going in a business. It's one of the whys that you do it because you
Yeah.
find people just lives changed. And sometimes it's not even the thing you expect. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's the smallest sentence you say and not the lecture you give that really changes
Yeah.
people's lives.
And I think, one of the dopest things that you're doing is you're creating community. Healing
Yeah.
happens in community, and you're creating that safe space for them to come. Where, especially for males, that's hard to find
Yeah.
that community. And, there's a reason why that majority of your clients are male, because they need that safe space and you're needed in that space for them. Um,
Yeah.
can you tell me, like, what is the biggest challenge for survivors or thrivers to reclaim their power and their confidence?
Yeah. Um, I mean, lots of things, but the biggest piece is when this trauma happens to you, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
listening, please know that this is not your fault. What happened to you is not your fault. And also, it is your responsibility to heal. And when you can
Mm-hmm.
wrap your brain around that, of like, this was not my fault. And also, I have a choice that I can make my life different and be joyful, be fulfilled.
Yeah.
That's where you can start going, okay, I'm ready to start making some change. But the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing of starting to reclaim your power after that mindset shift is diving into that self-awareness. Like, what do you need to heal? How can we make healing accessible for you? And so one of the first things that I do is I walk my clients through various different exercises on understanding their triggers,
Mm-hmm.
understanding how to get grounded in the present moment, and understanding how to even be nice to themselves. Like, I'm not talking about self-love. No, we are not there. We are
Mm-hmm.
talking about how can I be kind to myself today? How
Mm-hmm.
can I not believe that I'm a POS today?
Yeah.
And really just strip it all down and go super, super basic, because what we're trying to do is reattach ourselves to our bodies. I always tell people, when you experience this trauma, for me, it felt like immediate disconnect and like I don't live there anymore. Like I don't live
Mm-hmm.
in my body anymore. It's not safe. I can't trust myself. I can't trust the
Mm-hmm.
decisions that I'm making. I also can't trust anybody else around me, because if one person can do this to me, why couldn't everybody?
Hmm.
And so a lot of mindset shifts, a lot of that disconnect, but then just slowly reconnecting that to yourself. So one of the first things that I prescribe, there's quotes around prescribe on purpose, is these 4 things:
Okay.
breathing, walking, drinking water, sleep. And
Hmm.
everyone's like, yeah, everybody and their mom is talking about that. I'm like, okay, but are you actually taking deep belly breaths, or are you literally ignoring your basic human need for breath throughout the day? And you're just
Hmm.
go, 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 shutting off. You're not even conscious of it.
Right.
Are you actively noticing, I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink some water? Because that starts building your intuition back. That starts building the mind, body, soul connection back. Same
Hmm.
with sleeping. Am I tired right now? Right.
Yeah.
And that's a whole separate topic. But even just understanding, like, am I sleeping enough? And then going for a walk.
Hmm.
When we experience this type of trauma, we self isolate, or we go off in the other direction, or sometimes we're a little bit of both.
Hmm.
I was definitely a little bit of both. And we do that in a way of like to escape. And what we're doing is we're either escaping from ourselves or escaping from others, but we're disconnected from our natural world. So, are you going for a walk? Can you get yourself outside? Because
Hmm.
there's so much science about what just forward movement does, but then also, like, are you moving your body in a way that's not destructive? And so all of those things, they sound really, really simple, but just because something is simple doesn't mean that it's easy to do.
It's true.
Yeah.
That is true. And so it starts with the mind,
Mm-hmm.
the mind shift, and then reconnecting with your body. And that's a very interesting perspective. Like, I've never thought about that. And now that you say that, and thinking about how sometimes people use drugs or, liquor to cope, I can understand now the disconnection with the
Yeah.
body and yourself. So it starts with shifting the mind and knowing that you have to make a choice if you want to heal
Yeah.
in order to
For
reclaim your
sure.
power. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I really like what you said that too, because oftentimes, like, the thing that we're running away from, it is ourselves and it is our mind. So if
Mm.
we can start shifting that mindset, then it allows space for us to go, oh, hey, I have a body here. Maybe I should
Yeah.
do something with that. But we often, like, live up here so much that
Mm.
even if we haven't experienced this trauma, so much of us are disconnected from our soma. That's why you hear about somatic healing happening all over the
Mm.
place. And that's where, for me, when I bring in walking, I'm like sneakily, you know, bringing in the soma, like bringing in the
Right.
body. Let's, and then we start, okay, did you notice your feet on the ground? Like, how did that feel? What did that look like? And
Yeah.
it's such small, subtle changes. One, so your brain goes, oh, this is easy. I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
And two, so it doesn't feel scary as you are slowly changing and evolving your life. Because oftentimes, as you slowly change and evolve your life, that's the thing that allows for sustainable healing. It's not going to be an overnight
Mm.
decision or an overnight um, change that you do that allows you to actually continue to
Yeah.
heal and continue to move forward in your life.
Wow. And so after a person has gone through the mind shift, and they've reclaimed their power, how, in your experience, does one start showing up confident in the world, like accepting new relationships and being with people? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. So my biggest things that I help my clients through is developing unwavering confidence, setting healthy boundaries, and
Mm.
building their support system. And we've talked about kind of all of these things already. You talked about, we heal in community. So
Yeah.
what is your support system? And that's after the prescription of these are the 4 things I need you to do. The very next thing we do is, who is on your healing team?
I love
And I
that.
have a whole exercise. Yeah. I have a whole exercise that I walk them through, and we just like play their favorite music and we jam. And, I ask them to go through this exercise where it's basically listing out just a bunch of people. And then we start practicing boundaries by crossing people off that list, highlighting people, circling people. And then finally they get to a point where they've developed their entire team. They look at it again, and then we start adding some more people onto there that they might not have thought of. Right. So usually I'm like, remember to put me on the list. Right. Like, you're here. Remember that I'm on that list too. And they're like, oh, and they can start to build that out. And that's huge for accountability, which is very important for reclaiming your power and building your confidence, because when you show up for yourself, that's huge. But when other people can see that you're showing up for yourself too, and they can recognize that in you, it's just more data for your brain to go, oh, I can do this. Yeah. Oh, this is happening. I am keeping my word. I am trustworthy. And those were things that we were talking about before that seemed very, very distant. So how are we reconnecting this? So that is, so building their healing team, that's what I call it. And then that's kind of, we start building those boundaries by who are the people that are like, no, get out of here. And who are people who are your ride or die. And then are those ride or dies actually people that you need on your healing team, or they are ride or die for a destructive behavior? That's a difficult conversation you have to have with yourself. And then setting healthy boundaries. For every person, it's a little bit different. What is the thing that they want to work on? What are the boundaries that they need? Some people it's family, some people it's work, some people it's friends. But really kind of understanding what are the structures that I need in place at this exact moment in my life to be able to reach the goals that I have set, which we do in the onboarding in Thrivers Academy. Like, what do you want out of this program? Why are you here? What do you want to do? So how are we going to set those boundaries to get those goals? And then we're constantly shifting and adjusting and changing those boundaries when we add in new tools and when we add in new information. And so sometimes the boundaries is just like, I'm going to put my phone on airplane mode, and that's boundary 1, and we don't do anything else for a week. And then it's okay. Right? Like, what is what is accessible for you? Yeah.
I love that. And all of those are key steps in a person healing, and then having the unwavering confidence like you spoke of. Because you can't miss the steps. It's all necessary to get to that point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you ever have someone that was like, I think I want to do that part. We'll just move to the next part.
Yeah, I'm sure definitely. I mean, me too, right? I'm like,
too.
Can I skip to the good part? Like, I don't, what is, no.
Is there a shorter path?
Yeah. You want me to meditate? Girl, you better be tripping. No, that is not happening. And I'm like, but bear with me.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I really love having a healing team. I've never heard of that in my life. So you probably should like coin that. That's your phrase.
TM.
Yes, definitely. But having a healing team, I think people don't look at their circle of folks in their life and say, that person, like my daughter, she went through some trauma with her grandma, and she was 13, and she said, you're not good for my mental health, so I need to create a boundary. At 13, she's saying that. And it's really hard to create those boundaries with people that you love, or people that you've been friends with for like 20 something years. How do you advise your clients and even the listeners for today? How do you advise us to really create those boundaries with, especially those deep relationships that we have?
Yeah. Oh, and this is hard. Like, this is the first exercise that we do that people are like, oh, she is not joking. Like, they're like, oh yeah, I can write a list of people that I know. And I'm like, just wait for step number 2. Because it's that reconnection again to your self-awareness that you're going, having really hard conversations with yourself of, has this person actually been supportive of me?
Mm.
And so for a lot of people, they come out of that exercise and they have 2 people on their list. And it is devastating for them. And the thing that I have to remind them is quality over quantity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
more quality people that you have in your life that are actually going to support you, the quicker your healing is going to become. And then you also don't have to focus on everybody else's needs. You can really start to focus in on, what did you need today? What do you
Mm.
need to do? And so 2 people is way better than 20.
Yeah.
And I will tell people, you have too many people on your list. Like, there's no way you're keeping this many relationships right now at this stage in your life. And
Jeez.
it's rough, but it's at this stage where you're healing and you have so much healing to do. It's not feasible. It's not sustainable. And it doesn't mean that you never get to come back to those relationships. It just means take a really hard look.
Mm.
Who didn't believe you when you told them? They're gone. Who has habits that you're trying to change? They're gone.
Mm.
Who are there people in your life that are always putting you down, that make you believe the negative self-talk that's in your brain? They're gone. For
Mm.
some people, that's your mom. That's hard. For some people, that's your grandma. That's
Yeah.
hard. For some people, that's your best friend. And then you start to go on this journey where we're doing other things and we're building confidence, and you start to realize, like, oh, my self-worth is different. And then you can maybe start rebuilding that relationship with those people.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that I do, I'm like, this isn't a leave it and never come back to it. Like, we're just going to set them over here for right now. But you
Mm-hmm.
might never want to come pick that thing back up, because we
Very
don't
true.
know what your transformation is going to look like right now. I have an idea, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't know. It's probably going to be bigger and better than we can even imagine.
Wow.
The other thing that I help them do is, when we get to that list and there's 2 people left, we start adding in people, right? I'm like, I'm on that list. For some people, it's their faith.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever entity they believe in, they put them on the list. For some people, it's, okay, who do we need to strive to be on our list? Is there a lawyer? Is there
Mm.
a doctor? Is there a teacher, a mentor that you need to put on this list? Because
Mm-hmm.
the people on your team, on your healing team, they don't need to be these physical people in your life. There are so many mentors that I have who have no idea that I exist.
Mm. Okay.
Absolutely none. But I've consumed their content and they have fully transformed my mindset and the way that I think.
Yeah.
And I've never had a conversation with them. So it's also getting really clear. That's hard. And then knowing,
Yeah.
but look at all these other people that you have access to as well.
Wow. That's amazing. Girl. How much time we got left? No. Oh
My
my
calendar is
gosh.
free for the rest of the day. I am all yours.
So tell me, we've talked about so many things. We talked about your Thrivers Academy, which, if you are a survivor or you are experiencing sexual assault, you can definitely reach out to Danielle and be a part of her community so you can begin your healing journey and have the support that you need. Um, what would you say to the younger Danielle?
Hmm. So many things. I would tell her that you have no idea the amazing and incredible life and journey that you're going to have,
Mm.
and that it is happening in spite of your trauma, and it is happening in spite of the way that you feel right now. Because right now you feel like you are trash and you feel like you are the most worthless human being who's ever existed, and that you are considering not even being here anymore. And that if I could just show her like a glimpse, like just like a 20-second clip of what life was going to look like, all of those thoughts would be like, all right, like, let's heal faster. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
That
we get
touched me.
stuck in those moments of when you're depressed and when you're anxious, you're like, I am always going to live here. This is it. And then I think we start to heal and we go on this roller coaster, and then we have a high. And I was very like manic and depressive for a while. I went through that kind of stage, and I would get to my manic stage and be like, I always am going to live here. Then I get to my depressive stage and be like, I'm always going to live here. And now that I'm more balanced from all the work that I've done, I'm just like, it's always changing. That is the only truth. If I don't feel good right now, I'm going to feel good in a couple seconds because I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And just reminding her that these are new feelings and they're going to change and grow as well.
Yeah. Before we leave, speak to those individuals, male or female, that have experienced trauma, sexual assault, and they're lost. They don't know where to turn or what to do. What do you say to them?
I say, I believe you. I support you. And I am you.
Yeah. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Amanda.
This has been such an amazing time with you. And we'll put all of Danielle's information in our show notes so you can get in touch with her. But please know that you are not alone. You are not alone, and that there is support out there for you. And we hope that you find it, and you can find Danielle because she'll lead you to the path of healing.
Thanks, Amanda.